Hi folks, how you doing? I'm Ross Minton. This is Grow Your Own Life. A bit of a different video this time. A few months ago, I was asked to go on the Plants and Me podcast, and it was really good. I had a really good time. Had a really good chat about gardening, plants, disability, and other different things. And so, if you'd like to check it out, there is a link below where you can download it to your usual podcast provider. If not, you can watch the video. Unfortunately, there's no footage of it, it's just sound, but I'm sure you can put it on in the background. So, as always, thanks for watching, take care, please subscribe, all the best, ta-ta for now.
There's lots of different things you could do, but just get your hands dirty, really. Just get your hands in dirt, in compost, in soil, and just try and grow the simplest seeds you can, and things like lettuce, salad leaves, cress. It's a great way to start.
Welcome to the podcast, everybody. Today I'm joined by Ross. We talk about all things gardening, and in particular how he's used gardening to help him get into the garden, help him get out and about. We had a really good conversation about how gardening has helped him with his life, and how it can help others as well. So it was a really, really enjoyable conversation, really, really good interview. Now we've obviously got to a time of year where things are a lot colder, and if you've got some plants that are a little bit tender, now's the time to bring them in without a doubt. So if you've got anything like that, I'm thinking of the stuff that we're bringing in at the moment. It's your lemon verbenas and things like that, and all of our show plants are in, but that's not necessary because they're tender. That's just because we want to protect them and wrap them up and make them look nice for all the shows coming up. So yeah, anything like that, make sure you bring them in, and we're working on some posts, some blogs and bits and pieces, so you'll be able to look at what you need to bring in. So without further ado, let's start the podcast.
Hi, you're listening to Plants and Me, the podcast that is all about plants, gardening, and the people who are passionate about them, with your host, Alan Lodge.
Welcome to the podcast, Ross.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, no problem at all. Thank you for joining us. Now, where are you joining us from?
I'm in Telford in Shropshire, so I'm smack bang in the middle of the country.
Brilliant. And how's the weather with you?
Wet. Very wet.
It's a relatively wet county, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's mainly down to the Welsh hills, the mountains. We seem to pretty much get all of the rain dumped on us just before the clouds go over towards Wales.
Excellent. Okay, so no need for watering at this time of year, I imagine.
To be perfectly honest, there's no need for watering most of the year, I think.
Really?
July, August, we can, obviously, as everywhere has their spells, but most of the time we're pretty damp all year round, really.
Yeah. Okay, so tell us a little bit about what you do.
Well, in relation to the garden, I am very much an amateur gardener person. Allotmenteer, I suppose, would be the correct word. I've always enjoyed my garden, and I've enjoyed gardening ever since I was a kid, but I had no real interest in doing anything other than growing a little bit of food up until very recently, when I found myself being made redundant because of various different issues, and because of a worsening disability. So now I tend to throw myself into growing food for the house, managing my allotment, and basically recycling whatever I can get my hands on to grow some food, really.
Okay. And this started roughly, this was 2 years ago, did you say?
It's probably a little bit longer than that, but 2 years ago I started to take it more seriously, so yeah.
Right. Okay. And you mentioned a disability. Do you mind telling us what that is?
No, not at all. Basically, I have a muscle condition which is very similar to muscular dystrophy, which is something that the Joe public kind of know and understand, but it's not muscular dystrophy. It's a type of it's a mutation on a condition called arthrogryposis, which basically means all my muscles in my body don't work as they should, and cause pain and stiffness and all the things that go with it, really.
Okay, and how does that affect gardening?
Massively, really. It'd be a lie to say anything else really. It doesn't hold me back as such, but you have to think about everything very differently. Actually, I can take yesterday for a prime example. I had some wood chippings delivered to sort the paths out in my back garden, and obviously they've been tipped in the front garden. I've probably got 10 meters to get these wood chippings from where they are now to where they need to go. I managed to do 2 barrows yesterday of wood chippings before I had to stop for the day. I imagine, like most people listening to this, will probably think, just how did just pushing 2 barrows 10 meters twice, completely, write you off for the day. But that's how my condition manifests itself. So when I garden, I have to plan kind of things methodically, and I know that jobs that I want to get done are going to take a hell of a lot longer than a normal person per se would take.
Okay. And you've had that is this a lifelong condition? How does it work?
Yeah, I've had it since birth. I was born with it. It's progressively got worse over the years, and it will get worse still. So it's what I know. It's what I'm used to, really. So
okay. And does that give you a completely different angle to show people how you're gardening?
Yeah, I think so, but it's something that I've picked up on over the years, really, that I think I tend to do things differently, mainly out of easiness and convenience. Some people can probably think that it comes across a little bit lazy, but it's not lazy because I don't want to do it. It's laziness. I suppose it's not laziness, but it's a type of change in your habits, because I can't physically do certain things a certain way, so I try and find a workaround that basically gets me to the same destination but a completely different path.
And in general, have you always found the end destination you want to get to?
I think, like all gardeners, really, yes and no. I think you can be the best gardener in the world, and sometimes you'll have a crop that fails, and it's just, you're not quite sure why, but it just does. But I'd say 8 times out of 10 that, yeah, I tend to get there or thereabouts at least.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about your garden and your allotment.
Well, my garden is just an old 1950s council house, so they're quite a good size compared to modern build. So I just have a basic front garden with wildflowers, back garden, little patio area, and some raised beds for growing salads and things, just so they're close to the kitchen. And the allotment is kind of that on a bigger scale, really. Wildflowers, couple of greenhouses. I have chickens, and I tend to grow mainly in raised beds, simply because of, again, my condition. It saves bending and stooping and digging, and I try and grow anything I eat, really. Yeah, that's pretty. If I eat it, I try and grow it. Yeah, that's the best way of putting it.
That seems like a sensible way of going around allotment. To be honest, it's a full size plot, I assume.
Yeah, it's a little, because it's a modern allotment, and by that I mean it was only created about 10 years ago from an old playing field. So it's not the official, like, Victorian size of an allotment. I can't remember now what the actual rod length that's supposed to be. But yeah, I've got what on our site is called 2 half plots. I would say it was probably 2 tennis courts sort of size, give or take.
Yeah, so it's a reasonable size, definitely enough to produce a fair amount of food.
Oh, definitely. I mean, from probably May to early October, our shopping bill is massively reduced because of fruit and veg that we get from the allotment. So it's a massive. When you're not working, like I'm not in the moment because of my condition, it's a huge help on the budget for the family.
Okay. And at the moment, what are you cropping? What are you picking?
Coming to the end of my raspberries, my autumn raspberries. I've just had the last few punnets. I don't think I'll have any more. My pumpkins, I picked them a couple of weeks ago, but they haven't done very well this year, and neither of many other people in my area. We don't know whether that was because of the strange spring weather when it went hot wet, hot, wet for those weeks. I don't know if it was like that where you are.
It was, yes, yeah.
So they've really struggled. But runner beans, greens, lettuces, tomatoes in the greenhouse are still producing. Actually, I've probably got another couple of pounds to come yet from them, which I'm quite happy about.
No green tomato chutney yet, then?
No, all my tomatoes are ripening, and I don't think I'm going to have to make any green tomato chutney this year, which is amazing. So yeah, and believe it or not, they're being grown in a greenhouse which has about 3 panes of glass missing, and they're still producing. So it just goes to show that, as I was going back to earlier, sometimes things just work, sometimes things don't work. The reason this glass isn't been put in the greenhouse yet is simply because I haven't had the energy to do it. So I just thought, oh, well, sod that for now. It can wait.
Yeah.
Well, the tomatoes aren't bothered, so I'm not bothered.
No, quite. And I wonder what you'd make to this comment, actually, that I've always said to people that plants all want to grow. There's not a single plant on the planet that doesn't want to grow, and sometimes we just get in the way.
Well, funny you should say that, because I obviously you guys sent me some questions that you might ask, and I pondered over it. And one of the things I wrote in my notes was that plants want to make plants. It's in their genetics, in their DNA. And a lot of people go on about you've got to do this, you've got to do that, you've got to do the other. And a phrase that I use a lot, if anyone watches my YouTube channel, anyone reads my tweets, is I throw seeds at dirt and I see how it goes. And that's literally what I do. And like I said, 8 times out of 10, I find that the plants just want to grow. And I think you're spot on there, mate. That's it's the best way of putting it, really.
Yeah, and I think what's quite interesting is I've seen lots of side of the industry. So we've had a garden maintenance business. I've run a garden centre. The commercial nursery is what I call it, a commercial nursery. It's a small family nursery that we run now, that's been going for 70 years. I've seen all sides of the industry, and it's interesting when you see the commercial side, how little is done to grow a plant to a certain degree, in as much as I'm trying to think of an example. I've seen people on telly picking chilies, where they're carefully taking this chili off and cutting it with a pair of scissors and all this sort of stuff. And actually you can just snap a chili off, and my daughter's been doing that since the age of 2. So it's sometimes I think it's too easy for people to get concerned about all these proper ways of doing stuff. Sometimes you can just do it.
Exactly that. And there's a lot of old myths around gardening as well. And I think my actual background away from gardening is advertising. I was a graphic designer, and my master's is in advertising, so I was quite clued up on marketing stuff. And a lot of things that I see in garden centres, or I see on the TV or in books, that people saying you need to do this, you need to do the other. If you take it back to its root of where that myth came from, where that idea came from, it was either to create a job so someone didn't get laid off, like the Victorians, or it was to sell you something like a tool or some fertilizer that you didn't really need. and you can, and there's a lot of things in gardening that people still think you have to do, which is just, it's come from a myth from, I don't know, the 1960s, when someone tried to sell somebody something. But no, throw seeds at dirt and see how it goes, and you'll be surprised at just how successful it is.
Yeah, definitely, without a doubt. And you mentioned YouTube there, so you're on there a fair bit. What do you do on there?
I kind of do a little bit of everything, really. It's mainly focused around my allotment, but I talk a little bit about mental health and about having a disability, and how basically my allotment and my chickens have basically saved me from spiraling into the depths of despair, because it can be quite depressing sometimes when you've got a condition and you have to stay in the house. But having to go out every couple of days to feed my chickens and this, that, and the other has really helped. I metal detect, and I put the occasional video on there for metal detecting, and I also go fishing, and I put the occasional video on there about fishing. And it all started really as a way to store footage from my allotment, because I'm rubbish at making notes. So I started filming my allotment, just so I know what I planted where and where I planted things, and just as kind of a visual diary. And the phone got full, and then the laptop got full, and then I thought, what am I going to do with all these videos I've got? I put them on YouTube, and people started watching them, and it just went from there. Really, it was completely by accident, but I've now kind of got into the swing of things, and there's like a little bit of a mini community around my allotment. I've got some regulars that always comment and stuff, and it's, in fact, the whole gardening community on YouTube is great, because you get to see what people are doing, not only up and down the country, but all around the world. You get to pick up ideas from different people, and most people tend to talk to each other offline as well. I've so many YouTubers that are now in my phone book that when you want to ask them a question, you just ping them a message off it. It's a great little community we've got on YouTube.
Yeah, definitely, and I think it's almost a new generation of gardeners, and by that I mean it's people that have realised, actually, if I make a video that contains all the Latin names and all the proper ways of doing this, no one's going to watch it anyway. So just by necessity, people have, and it's not dumbing down, that's the wrong way to put it, but they've made it simpler for people, which has brought in this new generation of gardeners, which I think is fantastic.
Oh, it's brilliant. Yeah, I think they've, to coin a phrase from like modern culture, they've made it real, which is great. And it's good that you picked up there on obviously the Latin names. Sometimes with some gardening magazines, some gardening TV shows, you can just get bombarded with these Latin names. And I mean, I've been to university. I'm probably not the best person to talk to about this, but for a lot of people that haven't been to universities, who've been to Oxford or wherever, or this, that, and the other, probably have no understanding of Latin. I have very little understanding of Latin. So why are the Latin names of plants still relevant just to the base community of gardening? In my opinion, they're not really. They're not, and sometimes it can come across as a little bit pretentious. People are probably going to hate me for saying that now, but that's the way. As a very amateur gardener, that's the way sometimes I see these TV shows and these articles.
And I think the industry as a whole, and like I say, I've seen all sides of it, needs to realise that that opinion is very, very common. And I think there is place for Latin names, without a doubt. We get approached at RHS shows at Chelsea and things like that, and someone says, I've got this, and they give us a common name, and I'm thinking, I've never heard of that in my life. And I'm sitting there thinking, I wish they gave me the Latin name. I probably know what it is. Because common names change, probably, actually. You're not, I'm guessing, 150 miles away from us in Essex, roughly. And there will be common names that are different in Essex that they are in your area. So they have a place. They obviously started so people didn't poison themselves. And that's less likely now. But I wouldn't like to be on the record. I clearly am on the record now saying that. But yeah, I think you're right. I think making it more accessible for people is very, very important, without a doubt. And you've touched on something. I was interested to see a thread of, you were saying that to do with mental health, that you did a bit of gardening, you do a bit of metal detecting, a bit of fishing. All of those things involve you getting out the door, being in touch with nature, going for a walk in the wind and the rain and the sun and all that sort of stuff. Do you think that's the element that really helps with the mental health?
100%. Yeah, 100%. I honestly think being outdoors is, no matter what you do, is a massive factor in improving everyone's mental health. And again, you only have to look into, look at punishments over the centuries. Why is solitary confinement? Why is being locked in a cell a punishment? Because as human beings, that's completely alien to us, and it could drive you mad. So if for whatever reason you find yourself locked inside a lounge, yes, you could have the internet, TV, and your heating and food and this, that, and the other, and it might not seem like a prison cell as such, or it might not seem as some kind of like Chinese torture technique or whatever. What you're doing is you're excluding yourself from the real world, and so just getting outside, even if it's for half an hour a week, will massively benefit your mental health. And well, I'm pretty sure, I couldn't quote the references, but I'm pretty sure it's been scientifically proven now that just a couple hours a week outside can, like, boost endorphins and everything else, and basically make you happier.
And actually, there was I've mentioned it on the podcast before. Actually, there was a study. I don't entirely remember where it's from. I think it's Harvard Medical School, where they had people go outside who had depression and stand on the grass in bare feet for a period of time, and they saw massive benefits.
Oh yeah, I've read a lot of stuff about that, and I just to people who don't know me, I am not a hippie. If that was, I am not one that buys into alternative therapies. I scrutinize everything, and I'm not that way inclined at all. But yeah, I've looked into like what they call grounding techniques, getting out in nature, and sounds daft. Touching a tree, just going and touching a tree, like you said, barefoot on the grass, feeling the wind and rain in your face, and it clears your mind. And those worries that you can have, whether it's you're worried because of your disability, you're worried because of relationships, whatever, we've all got worries in modern society. Whatever it is, just doing those things for a few minutes a day, it's just a massive benefit.
And gardening can obviously help with that. So let's give people a few ideas of what they can do to get out in their garden. So, like you said, modern houses often have much smaller gardens, sometimes virtually no garden at all. So, what would you say to do to someone who wanted to have a bit of a go at getting outside and having a bit of gardening? What would you say to them?
Well, I think anyone can grow anything. I'm a big lover of food growing. I do like my plants, my flowers and things, but it's not my cup of tea all the time, really. So I like food, and I would say that even if you've live in a block of flats and you haven't got a garden, I believe that there's some foods that you can grow, and I would on your windowsill, even if you popped on eBay and got a grow light, or anything to help. But I would just say get a bag of compost, get some trays, pop to one of the supermarkets, Wilkinson's, garden centres, wherever. Get the cheapest stuff you can find. Get a packet of cress or a packet of salad leaves, and grow them, and just watch them germinate. Get your hands in the soil, and then before you know it, within a week or two, you're going to be eating egg and cress sandwiches. You're going to have lettuce for your salads, whatever, and that should hopefully, excuse the pun, sow the seed. And then before you know it, you'll be, even if you haven't got a garden, you could go and do some guerrilla gardening. Go and tidy up the flower bed outside your flats, or put some wild flower seeds on your walk to work, so you can watch them grow in the springtime. So there's lots of different things you could do, but just get your hands dirty, really. Just get your hands in dirt, in compost, in soil, and just try and grow the simplest seeds you can, and things like lettuce, salad leaves, cress. It's a great way to start. I think that's how all of us started as kids, and if you missed that as a child and you didn't get that experience from your family, from your grandparents, there's no reason why you can't do it now, regardless of what age you are.
Yeah, definitely. And you mentioned grandparents there. Something we always ask people is their first memories of gardening and growing. Do you remember yours?
Yeah, I do. My grandparents are really keen gardeners. They're mainly flower orientated, but they do have a vegetable patch and stuff. But they have a lovely garden full of flowers. And my first gardening memory is my granddad showing me how to collect the seeds from marigolds. And I think a lot of kids that probably had gardens and marigolds probably did that. And so marigolds still today are probably one of my favourite flowers. I know they're kitsch, and I know a lot of people hate them, but because of that memory, I love growing marigolds.
Well, in this area, you don't see marigolds that often, and it's one of my first memories as well, because this sounds like I live in a massive mansion, but my granddad had a roundabout in front of the house, and it wasn't. I think it was a bit that he never got around to actually putting concrete in, and it ended up turning into a little flower bed. But he put marigolds in there because we were big bedding plant growers at the time. He always had marigolds in there. And I'd completely forgotten about this until around about 5 or 6 years ago. We did Hampton Court Flower Show, and I was walking through the gardens, and there was a can't remember what country it's from, but there was a sort of a guest exhibitor who just planted up a garden desk full of marigolds, and it was absolutely fantastic. So they're definitely not to be ignored.
No, I do. I still love them. I still love seeing them. And if I probably shouldn't admit to this, but I can neither confirm nor deny that if I walk past a marigold and it's in seed, I might steal some of those seeds for myself.
You're just helping the plant.
Yeah,
really.
That's all I'm doing. Yeah.
Excellent. And obviously your grandparents were massive influences on you, but as every gardener has, and we want people to go out and garden, but there's going to be failures, and unfortunately the people that maybe we inspire from this podcast to go and sow those lettuce seed may have a failure. They forget to water it, or a blackbird comes and bites them all, or something like that. Do you remember any notable failures you've had?
Crikey, I have them all the time. I had some the other week. Talking about cress, I tried to grow some cress the other week, and you just epitomised it. I forgot to water them, and they died. I wouldn't say I have so many failures, but it's just about bouncing back from them, really. Like I said, this year's pumpkin harvest was a bit of a nightmare, but that was probably down to the weather. Over the years, I tell you one that's bitten me in the bum slightly, which I wish I'd never have done, was growing my wildflowers in the front garden. I really like the idea of getting nature into the garden and making little oases, and I leave the grass to go long, and so I don't deadhead as much as most people do, because I leave that for nature, for insects to crawl in and make their houses over the winter and so on and so forth. So I whenever I can get a chance to put wildflowers in, I do. And someone gave me some. This is again where the Latin name would come in. I'm going to shoot myself in the foot. We call it here death come quickly, which is a type of I think it's like a geranium that spreads along the ground, and it absolutely smells. I don't know what the technical name is for that, but someone gave me some of this and said, "Oh, the bees love this. It is poisonous, so obviously be careful. But put it in your garden, and it will spread, and it's really nice." And I thought, that's brilliant. I'll do that. My word, I put one plant in 3 years ago, and I decided after about 9 months of it spreading, I don't want this in my garden anymore. I'm still digging this plant out of my borders now, and so that is probably one failure that is still biting me in the bum, really.
Yeah. I think we call that crow's foot.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Little pink flowers.
Tiny little thing, yeah. You're right. It's a geranium, and it's a geranium that looks like it's never seen any light. Basically, very straggly.
That's it. That's the one. Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah. And it's interesting. Like you say, shoot yourself in the foot. I've done that plenty of times, but I have to say I completely agree with you. This Latin name thing, that it will put off beginner gardeners. I think actually people end up learning them just through osmosis. Basically, they end up seeing them on packets in books and stuff like that as people get more interested.
Oh yeah, I think it's one of those things, isn't it? It's whenever you take up any hobby, regardless of what it is, there's some people are going to take it to the absolute max, and some people are going to potter away and do what they want to do. And really and truthfully, there is no right or wrong way of doing it. And the people that want to go out and learn the Latin names and know them, then I say kudos to you. That's if that gives you enjoyment, then crack on. Because at the end of the day, that's what gardening should all be about. Really, it should be enjoyment, and no one should really tell you how to garden or how you should be gardening. So
yeah.
So yeah, apologies to all the people that I insulted 10 minutes ago by saying Latin names are rubbish.
There'll be people out there that know the Latin name of it as well. So something we always ask people as well, and I'll save this for a last question because I wonder if you've got an interesting take on it, because as you mentioned the disability, we always ask about whether there's a particular tool or a bit of equipment that you always take into the garden, and I wonder whether that would be slightly different for yourself.
I don't know really. I suppose the one thing that I do use a lot in the garden, and I don't know, I've never really seen anyone else use them as much as I have, is a good knife. And by that I don't just mean like a pen knife, but like a really good, sharp knife. For instance, at home, in the shed, I have an old chef's knife, like a butcher's knife. And down the allotment, I have a similar sort of knife, and I find that I can do pretty much everything with a good knife. I can chop through the thickest of stalks. I can make little tiny cuts on tomato plants. I can dig with it. I can weed with it. I can hoe with it in a raised bed. You can use it as almost like a hand hoe. So I find a damn good knife pretty invaluable, really. And that's probably the one tool that I wouldn't be without. I think you can do almost anything with a good knife.
Yeah, excellent. And where do you see your YouTube and your vlogging and things going in the future?
I don't know. I've no desires of world domination or to go on Strictly Come Dancing, and so like other YouTubers. But no, if it gets people interested in gardening, and if it helps people with disabilities talk about their disability, and if it gets people with, depression or mental health issues to go outside and do something, then I'm very happy with that. And if it stays exactly how it is now, which is about 1,000 subscribers and a couple of videos a month, I would be very happy with that. I think it will grow organically, and it will become what it becomes, and I'm happy with however it goes, really.
Excellent. And I know people are going to want to check out your YouTube channel and things like that. We've obviously put all the links in the show notes, but tell people how they can get in contact.
Yeah, on YouTube, you can type in "Grow Your Own Life," and I should pop up. And obviously, my name's Ross Minton, and I'm pretty sure if you type Ross Minton into YouTube, I also pop up as well. Pretty easy to find me, actually.
Excellent. Good. Well, thank you very much for joining us, Ross. It's been really interesting talking to you, and I know you would have inspired some people to get out in the garden.
Oh, no, thank you. Thanks for having me. And yeah, as I said, just anyone who's interested in gardening that's never done it before, just throw seeds at dirt and see how it goes. You'll be surprised.
Excellent. You got your own catchphrase by the sounds of it.
Yeah. I should patent it.
Yeah, definitely. Excellent. Thank you very much, Ross.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you for joining us on the Plants and Me podcast. We'll be back soon. If you can't get enough of all things plant-related, pop over to plants-uk.co.uk. And if you enjoy our podcast, don't forget to subscribe and rate us.